Hey everybody. You know what's great about a sound recorder here with Windows? Is you don't have to worry about it stopping when you switch over to something, like say the internet and read off a few things. And what's funny is over the past few weeks, if not the past week period, we've had a lot of people, a lot of Sonic fans basically just going off the wall or just with rants and journals and entries and stuff like that about what's going on in the comic. And I'm not saying I'm not one of them. But some of the people just have some things they want to get off their chest to the point like, they just can't stand it anymore sometimes, you know? You know, sorry about that, but it's like they just can't stand it anymore. So here's a few of the things that some people are talking about. For example, if I can get to them. Some of them are just questions about what's going on and who's to blame, and some are just, people just want to get stuff off their minds. For example, this one here was done 4 days ago in 17 days and 17 hours ago. Done by a fan. We'll just call him ASL. ASL. This is what they said. This is what they said. This is something that's been on their mind. This is one of the things. This is what they said, and I quote: this is ASL. This is what they said, and I quote: while doing some browsing on here and seeing some comments from pro Archie Sonic fans, one thing still is going on that bothers me a great deal. Whatever Ian Flynn says, they always take his word on it. Now, I'm not criticizing or condemning anyone who does this. That is their right. But I personally cannot understand why any of them would take whatever that silver-tongued hack says anymore as actual fact. One of the biggest arguments they love to make is Ian doesn't hate Sally or the Sadie M cast. He said he's a fan of them, and that's good enough for me. Really? Since when does butchering characters pointlessly so Sega's little darlings can shine in their place show us Ian's a fan of them? That doesn't prove he likes them at all. If anything, it shows the exact opposite. And of course they counter by saying he was showing the freedom fighters at the lowest points. Fans were complaining about them winning too easily, and this proved they didn't. So the best way to show that they're not invincible is having Eggman now win too easily and making the heroes act like idiots? That's not even my biggest complaint about the whole scenario. That's just one of the minor ones. Anyway, back on topic. For those who want to defend Ian and accept whatever he tells them, this is all I have to say to you in response. Actions speak louder than words. I can say time and time again I'm a huge Son Amy fan or a big Elise fan, even make it believable, but does that make it true? Or does that mean it's true? No, of course not. That's why I couldn't care less what Ian says to make himself look noble. His words are nothing more than smooth talk to me. I look at his actions, and his actions don't say to me he likes Sally or even the Sadie M cast. Instead, they show me he thinks they're expendable and can do whatever he wants with them as long as he can get away with it. Honestly, I couldn't care less he's trying to reintroduce them now to show the fans he does like them. That doesn't prove anything. That's like a person bringing expensive dolls to a girl he just punked last night, thinking it will make it all better. No, that doesn't make it all better. Ian, you desecrated our characters for kicks, and that's not a fact. And that is not a fact you're going to make go away anytime soon. with a nice little story you're working on now. You owe us a huge apology for wasting our time, but I know you never will. You'd rather point the finger at Sega and your bosses for your horrible arc here. You can call this a biased fan brat rant all you want, Archie Sonic fans, but the point still stands. Actions speak louder than words. Why don't you all stop listening to Flynn's lies and actually look at what the man is doing instead? Anyhow, that's all I've got to say. If anyone would like to leave a comment below, go ahead, but keep your opinion to yourself if you don't have anything subjective to say. And that is just one. And ladies and gentlemen, that is just one of the many that have been done this year. Done this week, I should say. And that was by ASL 4 days ago, 4 days and 17 hours ago. Now, here's something else. This is done by a fan 4 days ago and 7 hours ago, and we're going to call him Vic. We're going to call him Vic. And they say, and this is what they talk about when they say something particular about Sega. This is what Vic said 4 days ago, and I quote, one thing I may have noticed with Sega, the way they are mandating Archie and their greed, as well as the fact that they may or may not ignore petitions, and that they do not listen to any complaints from the Archie fans, have caused me to notice one thing. And that sounds somewhat similar to how an imperialist nation operates on an totalization or a intolerable government, or non-tolerable whatever he calls it, totalization government, or most of all, possibly how a Big Brother 1984-esque government operates. Sega is becoming tyrants. They are putting a lot of mandates on the comet and frequently interfere, which does it sound similar to a puppet government in some way? Basically, Sega is no different from the imperialist nations of the 19th century and a Stalinist regimen. And something else. Does their control seem somewhat similar to the way an authorization government functions? Please enter these in your own opinion. I can know what you think may think of this. Or whatever. Basically, that's one person. That's Vic 4 days ago. Talking about something peculiar about Sega. Basically pointing out similarities of Sega to some tyrant nations of the past or current. Then you have UB. We're going to call him UB, who 4 days ago and 4 hours ago said this about what they call more than just design changes. This is what they said, and I quote, UB. Looking at 252 and 253, we got our first glimpses at the new rotor in King Max. Now looking at Max, he's more squirrel than the squirrel chipmunk hybrid that we have been used to seeing. Honestly though, King Max's redesign I kind of favor a bit. He looks better, and another thing too, he's no longer a bitter old man. He's a lot nicer for the time being. It could easily change. And honestly, I welcome a nicer King Max. Kind of reminds me of how he was in SatAM a bit. Now Rotor, as I am still 50-50 on his redesign, granted, I like how he's better looking and not injured, but it just doesn't feel like Rotor to me. He is more like a tougher version of him in SatAM, I guess. But he was different than how portrayed in the comics in SatAM. Rotor was always the guy who stayed behind for all the technical stuff. But I'm getting to the point where I want to bring it up. 2 redesigns. 2. One full, one partial per se. Now, I'm not going to go out there and say all the comic cast is going to get one. I'm just saying it appears that way in this moment of time. Now I still think Antoine will have the French accent. Bunny with the Southern Belle style accent. Those won't change because that's deeply rooted in the character. But there are some bits I want to know. Will Antoine and Bunny still be together and married, or will it not happen at all? If the latter, what will the reactions be after touching Nicole? Will Ant still be cowardly but brave when necessary, or are they dumping that? Will Sonic and Sally go back to the things the way they were? We know stuff like that will be answered soon. But will it be the answers we want to hear, or will they have more or less a Sega mandated actions and all that? I'm thinking it's a mixture of Flynn, seeing how people called the Genesis wave his way of bending things into his way, and Sega, but if I'm proven wrong like everything else I argue, I will gladly admit I was wrong. Another thing I want to add while I'm at it. How the heck does touching Nicole make everyone remember the pre-Genesis wave timeline? I understand Nicole being from the future and all may have something to do with it, but I still see it as a major plot hole. Any theories? Well, I'll give you my theories in a little bit. And then we have another, which was done 3 days ago and 3 days and 13 hours ago. And basically, this person we're going to call DKMX, 3 days ago said this in their Wait What entry. This is what they said, and I quote, "Summaries of 254 are coming in, and the solicitors was correct. There is indeed a returning character from Saturday morning. You're never going to believe this. Really, you're not. I still don't. Well, if you insist, it's Mutsky. Only he's now a full Mobian and Uncle Chuck's apprentice. Make of that what you will." Yeah. In case some of you don't know, Mutsky was Sonic's dog in SatAM, at least in the Heads or Tails pilot episode, as well as a majority of the comic. He was Sonic's dog. And the only closest he ever got to communicating, English to English with Sonic was after Sonic came back from space. Now, the next one we have is entitled Not Mobius, Earth. And this was done 2 hours ago. In other words, about 50 hours this was done by, I'm going to call him Sky. And this is what he says, and I quote, "Okay, so now Mobius isn't going to be Mobius anymore. Chances are it's going to be Earth. If you haven't seen the latest 257 solicits, this is stupid. This is stupid is too kind for this. Almost sweet, really. Why would Sega actively destroy its own series? I've said everything I possibly could about this, and we've only found out about this from a post Ian Flynn made." And the post was, and I'll quote it again, even though it's not a good one. Quote Ian Flynn from what Sky has posted. "No, I'm not allowed to use Mobius. Get over it." That was Ian Flynn. And this is what Sky continues to say. And I hope a lot of you stupid Flynn supporters see this, because he doesn't give a crap about any of you or the story or the characters. Let's see what else we have. Muskie, Sonic's pet dog, becoming a full-fledged Mobian that no one honestly cared about. If Sega really wanted to turn the comics into the games, then that means we're going to get everything from vague stories, unclear species. If they're not Mobians, then what the heck are they? I don't think we will see Mobius ever again. So don't expect. I don't think we will see Mobius, anti-Mobius, ever again. So don't expect to, or Scourge's team, everyone's families and relatives are gone. That part where we saw the king, that was Sally's father. Expect that to be the last time you see him. Different names for locations, chunks of story content were taken out. Ian Flynn pretty much doing whatever the heck he wants. This isn't funny. This isn't cute. This isn't great for the comics. they honestly can't get canceled fast enough. But what I hate most is the fact, quote, oh, I can't call it Mobius anymore. What sense what sense is that? So, what sense does that make? Okay, what sense is it that, so what are you going to call it? Earth? They're really trying to turn this into Sonic X. That failed terribly. Sega never listens to anyone. They never listen with the fans. Heck, they never understand what the fans want. They just do whatever they think is right, and the world will just have to go along with the madness. That's why the fans are so divided. That's why the comics are hated on one end and loved on the other, because Sega's been meddling since day one, forcing the comic to keep going instead of letting it have a short run and making the story a certain way, which just made Sally the most hated character in existence. But no, and I bet money right now they're working on a game. They're working on games that has all the SatAM rejects they shoved in our faces 2015. I bet you. If they don't try to rush it. If they don't try to rush it. You can argue with me, quote, Ian has no choice in the matter, unquote. Well, if you ask me if I'm going to be shacked and chained on a 2-cent job and that's killing itself, I'll quit first. I don't care. And coming from Ian's response, I don't think he cares about us either. I think the message Sega gives up with this is clear. It doesn't want our money. It doesn't want our customer loyalty. It doesn't want to make us happy, so we will support them. It's just producing crap that idiots will buy, and that's it in a nutshell. But what's really blanking sickening is the fact what they think they are doing something right. Most of the game community hates the games. Yes, they're bringing more characters and not changing the formula. If anything, the game should stop becoming more like the comics with an actual focus, characters that build off one another instead of the crap Sonic Generation. Instead of the crap Sonic Generations was just that. Just took a chunk of the cast and threw them in a game as a framing device. If it sounds like I'm just babbling on here, because I am, I don't know what else to say. Sega is going to kill the series and take the SatAM redesign rejects with them. And I hope that fat bastard hack of a writer falls in a ditch. My point still stands. Don't buy this comic. Don't support these games. Once Sega stops getting money, maybe they'll finally wake up and a real change will be made. And that was done by Sky 50 hours ago. And then we have another question, if it'll pop up. Okay, UB did this one 21 hours ago. This is what UB said 21 hours ago, and I quote, group question, whose fault is it? Simple question. This is what UB says. Simple question. Whose fault is it? Whose fault is the way the comic is? Whose fault is it of the way the comic is going right now? Now, before we all throw Ian Flynn under the bus, we can't fully blame him. Sure, he comes up with the ideas and the stories, but it all isn't his fault. Personally, I think it's a mix of Sega, Archie, the restrictions, Penders, Flynn, among other. Sega cracking down on everything Sonic to make sure everything is in their view. They want everything in uniform and everything to be in line. 2, Archie, they have the second to last say in the comic. If it's not in their view, they won't accept it. 3, the restrictions, self-explanatory. 4, Ken Pender's lawsuit. His hissy fit caused most of this mess in the first place. Granted, Sega or Archie may have had this in place beforehand, but Pendas probably sped it up or changed things. 4, finally, Ian Flynn. Flynn gambled on the lawsuit and lost big time. He put Elias as the head of the Secret Freedom Fighters, Nagas take over Jeffrey, and have an arc with the echidnas thinking Pendas would lose. Guess what? It backfired, and he has to rewrite the comic, and his direction isn't a good way. So what do you guys think? Whose fault is this mess? And that's UB 21 hours ago. And then we have one more here. And this is again by UB, and this is 15 hours ago. His question is, Sonic to go werehog? And he provides a photo bucket deal here. But this is what he says. And I quote, Sonic appears to go feral after inhaling purple gas from Uncle Chuck's machine that was taken from the cracks in the earth. So Uncle Chuck, Mutsky, and Antron go to Spakaga to study samples of the earthquake. So it looks like Sonic will go werehog, or he goes insane. All I have to say to this is, yeah. And that's the question. For some of you that don't know, and I don't have the issue yet, maybe I'll get it today, maybe not. Sonic apparently has a sudden reaction to this purple mist, similar almost to Sonic Unleashed. So, okay, first of all, let's answer some questions. The first question, I think, goes back to the more than just design changes. And I think that's by UB. He wants to know, the last thing he asked, how the heck does touching Nicole make everybody remember the pre-Genesis Wave timeline? And he goes on to say that he understands Nicole being from the future and all may have something to do with it, but he still sees it as a major plot hole. Any theories? Well, here's my theory on it, UB. Nicole, yes, is from the future, but let's remember, she's also an AI, artificial intelligence. So she could easily be somebody that as soon as the Genesis Wave happened, could have just seen it happen and been like nothing really affected. Like the white light, she could have been standing in the white light when it happened and nothing really affects her. In other words, she could have been like, okay, there's a white light coming, something strange is going on, I need to go down. Like as soon as the white light, as soon as the first Genesis Wave happened, and maybe the second Genesis Wave and the third Genesis Wave, the third Genesis Wave, I should say. Or is it the fourth? The fourth, I guess. I don't know. The third to fourth Genesis Wave. Let's put it that way. When those happen, when those third and fourth Genesis Waves happen, storyline-wise, you could think maybe Nicole being the AI and being from the future, but mostly an AI, she'd be like, wait a minute. So she could be one of those unaffected that as soon as the white light happens and things change and things are starting to change, she can look around and see things that just seem out of place. So she could have ended up downloading herself back into her system, if you will, back into the computer. Like maybe she saw herself, or maybe she saw what was happening. I mean, I don't know. I mean, honestly, I think from a storyline perspective, she may have, downloaded herself or basically sent herself back into her mainframe and tried to figure out what was going on and saw the separate timelines and saw what was happening. Saw that in this timeline that she was in, that basically everything, like Mobotropolis, was no longer made of nanites and was just all real. So, again, my theory is because she's an AI, she's not really as affected as anybody else. So pretty much she could be like, when the Genesis Wave happens, she'll just be the kind of be like, I don't know what's going on. I'm going to try to do some research. End of story. So, yeah, that's just my theory on it. I'm thinking because she's an AI, she may have gone back into her mainframe, and as soon as she came out, she realized, wait a minute, I'm in the castle, but yet I'm coming out of my portable version. What's going on kind of deal. So to me, I'm thinking she might be the one that's like, wondering what the heck is going. She might be unaffected, but also be the kind that's like, this something just doesn't seem right. Something feels off. All right. Now, here's another question that UB puts out. Who's to blame? Well, I answered this question sort of in a video I'm doing, a little video project I'm doing. And I feel Sega does have to share a full some if not most of the responsibility for what's going on. I mean, like I said in that video, and I'll say it again here, I understand that Sonic is the bread and butter. He's the mascot. He's the Mickey Mouse. He's the bread and butter. But, they need to realize that sometimes when a company does when you ask or license your character, your franchise character, your mascot, to have a comic book adapted from him, or even have a cartoon series adapted from him, you have to realize that the comic or the cartoon is going to be a little different than what you present, and in the games. And what you need to do, if you're the creator of that mascot, creator of that franchise, you need to kind of separate. You need to give not just yourselves and those that work within your company, but you need to give the fans an understanding of like, okay, the games are a different version of Sonic, the cartoon and the comics are different versions of Sonic, so you got multiple Sonics to enjoy. You can't attempt to blend them all in together because, you want to coincide. You want people to pay more attention to the games. Or you want the gaming fans to pay more attention to the comics. You need to let them separately be so that there is no division, that there is no dividing, there is no war of words between the fans. You need to let the fans who enjoy certain aspects of a character, you got to let them enjoy those separate continuities. If they like one continuity, let them enjoy that one. If they like a different continuity, that's fine. I mean, I can understand bringing in certain game characters and probably adapting a few stories from games and all that. I get that. I get that, but to me, again, I understand Sonic's the bread and butter. I understand he's the moneymaker. He's the mascot. But the thing is, if you're going to let people do a comic book on him, you need to let them do a comic book. Don't try to make it into a 22 to 25 page advertisement of the games. In other words, don't try to say, okay, I want to do a full 4-page story arc in the main comic of Sonic Adventure 2. You could have done that when it came out, or something like that. Or say, I want to do a 4-page story arc in the main comic of Sonic Lost World. Again, you could do that, but the thing is, you got to let the comic book be a comic book. I mean, I'll give you examples. When Disney would license Marvel, and this is before Disney even owned Marvel or bought Marvel, this is before they owned the piece of the Marvel pie. Disney, when they would license their characters to be done through Marvel Comics, now this is just me guessing, but I'm pretty sure Disney didn't really have much restrictions on the characters in the comics because they understood a comic book is a comic book and you need to let it be a comic book. You cannot interfere. You can't do that. You can't interfere. You got to let a comic book be a comic book. Why do you think Mega Man is getting popular in with Archie Comics. Why do you think he's getting popular? It's because even despite the fact that his creators, his company that he helped build, that company that character helped build, Mega Man, that the company he helped build, Capcom, even though financially they're not doing so well, Mega Man, they are at least allowing the writers of the Mega Man comic at Archie Comics to have more free will. They're not mandating as much as people think they should. They're not mandating that much. And that's a good thing. That, my friends, is a good thing. It is. It's a good thing. I mean, you could take a look at the Ninja Turtles, in Image Comics and Archie Comics and Dreamwave and all those comics that have taken them and adapted them. Yes, the creators of the characters would say, hey, would probably say one thing or another, but they wouldn't be fully mandating them. They wouldn't be. They wouldn't be saying, oh, well, this needs to be done and that needs to be done and blah, blah, blah. No, they would keep them. They would probably say one or two, maybe a few things, but mostly they let the people writing the comics, the Ninja Turtle comics, they would allow those people writing TMNT to do what they want. They wouldn't really be bugging him that much. I mean, when Archie Comics had the Ninja Turtle license for a while to do the comic books in, they worked with two other guys that worked on the comic, and they created a character called Ninjara, real name Yumiko, Ninjara, if you will. And they didn't make her a mutant. No, she was a humanoid fox. Humanoid, not mutant, humanoid. Now, Kevin Eastman and Peter Laird could have said anything. They could have said anything they wanted, but they didn't. They didn't. They allowed it to go. They allowed her to be the girlfriend of Raphael until at least issue 72 or whatever, and that was it. I mean, literally, folks, from the ending page of issue 28, all the way from 29 to 72, which is basically 41 issues. 41 issues, 2 years. 2 years, folks. Just about 2 years. I mean, a little over 41 issues, basically about what? 24, almost 3 years, 3.5 years. They let this character be part of the team. And they could have easily done anything to get rid of her, but they didn't. They let the character of Ninjara Yumiko remain and be the girlfriend of Raphael for 3.5 years. And that's saying something. The point is, yes, Sega needs to take some, if not most of the blame and responsibility for what's going on. They need to. They need to take that blame. But so does Archie. Archie needs to realize that, hey, you once were able to make a comic on the Ninja Turtles without so many restrictions. That right now you are doing a comic on Mega Man with not so many restrictions. You should be able to do the same with Sonic. You should be able to lay down the law and tell Sega, look, we're doing a comic book adaptation of your character and the characters associated with him. Let us do a comic book. Let us do a comic book. Let us do a comic book and not a freaking advertisement for the games. So yeah, Archie needs to share a bit of that blame because they're not retaliating. They're not letting Sega know that, hey, we're a comic book company. We're about making comic books, not about making advertisements. The restrictions, yeah, self-explanatory, no doubt. Ian Flynn, yeah, he does need to take some of the blame because just like Archie Comics, he too, with all due respect, needs to stand up and say, hey, I'm a comic book writer. I'm also a fan of this franchise. I grew up a fan of this franchise. I followed this comic as a subscriber and a reader before coming on board. I'm a fan of these characters. Let me write them the way I want to write them. Let me write a comic book. Stop restricting me to do this and that. And yes, the Penders lawsuit doesn't help in any way, so it takes some of the blame. But mostly, if you want to put the blame on anybody, it's got to be Sega, with Archie right behind it, yes, and maybe Ian Flynn in third. But the thing is, I do agree that those are some of the people that need to take fault in what's going on. Now, as far as the whole Mutsky thing, yeah, that is a bit of a surprise. Again, like I said, for some of you that don't know, Mutsky, in the pilot episode of Heads or Tails, the Heads or Tails pilot episode for Sonic Saturday Morning, is Sonic's dog. And like I said, it was only after in the comics, only after Sonic came back from his Tossed in Space arc. It's only after he came back from the Tossed in Space arc that suddenly he discovered he could communicate with Mutsky because of a device implanted in his ear. But to turn him full-fledged Mobian or Dog Sapien, it's like, okay, where did this come from? Now, I can understand maybe it's because maybe it's because as a regular dog it just didn't make sense being around humanoid or Mobile Sapien characters. I get that. Humanoid characters like Sonic and Sally and Tails. So I can understand maybe that's why they did it. But still, it's like out of all the Satyam characters you could bring in, it's Mutsky? He only appeared in the pilot. That's it. And he appeared in a picture when he as a flesh and blood dog, and then as his roboticized self, and that's it. That's it. What I mean, that's the character? I mean, I would have liked to see Dulcie. She's a Satyam character. But to each their own. I'm pretty sure one thing people are talking about right now is how old is he being portrayed? Is he the same age as Tails? Is he the same age as Tails and Amy? Is he the same age as Sonic? Is he going to be a love interest to Sally or somebody? Who knows? I don't think the Sally thing we have to worry about, but, who knows? But again, of all characters, Mutsky, you want to bring back, and you want to bring him back as a full Mobian? Yeah, it is confusing, but maybe it's because I think they want to do more with him. And whatever that may be, we don't know. All right, and the last thing, Sonic to go Werehog. Sonic to go Werehog. Wow. Well, let me say this. If they are slowly going in that direction, if they are slowly going in the direction of turning Sonic into a Werehog for upcoming story arc, or, as some people are thinking, maybe making him go insane, I can understand that. I can see that happening. I can understand why it would happen. Let's take a look at the insanity part. If Ian Flynn says, okay, we're going to have Sonic slowly start to go insane because he inhaled those fumes. Let's say he does that. Let's say it's sort of his take on the whole dark Super Sonic from Sonic X. Because that's basically the last time we saw it happen. Let's say that happens. I can see it happening in a confrontation part 4, in the final part of this CTC Countdown to Chaos. I could see it happening. I can see it happening, and I can see him going off on Eggman big time, just going Pharaoh, Dark Sonic, whatever you want to call it, on Eggman, to the point that maybe Eggman's going to finally be like, hey, screw this crap. I don't want to deal with this side of Sonic anymore. I'm just going to try to conquer some lands, and that's it. But again, who knows? Who knows? But if he's going to, but that's the only way I see the insanity thing happening. That portion of it, if Ian Flynn decides to go in that direction. But if he decides to slowly adapt Sonic into the Werehog persona, that I could see too. And I could also see that at the end of Countdown to Chaos, or maybe later on in the Aftermath. I could see that. And I could see that again being part of him going to battle with Eggman and basically beating the living crap out of Eggman in the story. Just saying. But to me, all these entries, rants, opinions that have been done in the past week or so, I can understand where they're all coming from, and they all have a right. We all have a right to our opinions and to what we want to say and how we feel. But to me, it's more along the lines, folks. It's more along the lines that we just got to deal with what we got to deal with. You know, we just got to deal with it. I mean, you know, some things may not make sense. Some things do. Some of us may like some of the changes. Some of us may not. But you know what? It's not the first time a fan base has been divided. Some people have said it best. Fan bases have been divided for years. You take a look at the Scooby-Doo franchise. Scooby-Doo has two different, I guess you could say, continuities. One for this generation and one of the past. And there's a lot of people that enjoy the past more than they do the current. Some people like the past generation because it's funnier, it's better. Some like it because it brings Shaggy Rogers and Daphne Blake together as a pairing, as a couple. And anytime they see something like a hint or a subtle nod to that in the current generation, they're happy about it. And then again, you have the new generation. It's more about Mystery Incorporated and about the movies and stuff like that, and Fred and Daphne. And there's always going to be, because of that, there's going to be that division. You know, heck, even wrestling has it. TNA, Impact Wrestling, has its division of fans. You have a lot of fans that support it no matter what. You have some fans that want to enjoy it, but they don't like the decisions that are being made. And then, of course, you got a bunch of fans that are looking at TNA and saying, I give it another 2 years. You know, you're going to always have a divided fan base no matter what medium, no matter what franchise, no matter what sport. You take a look at Major League Baseball. You got Chicago Cubs and Chicago White Sox, both in the same city. You're gonna have a divide there. You might have some people that are fans for both, that love both. You're gonna have and then most times you're gonna have a division of where you have one side that likes the White Sox, and you got one side that likes the Cubs, and you can't change their opinion. End of story. New York, NFL. You got the New York Giants and the New York Jets, both share the same stadium. You're going to have a majority of fans that like both, and you're going to have a majority of fans, and then you're going to have a division of fans that like one side and the others like the other, and another side likes the other, and you can't change their opinions. That's basically how fan bases work, and no matter what we say or do, we can put opinions, rants, journals. We may not like decisions where you take the name of a planet and say, forget it, it's not going to be used anymore, which I personally think is stupid, but there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do about it. And then, of course, there are those that do like that change. So there's nothing we can really do because we're split down the middle as fans, because the fan base is split down the middle. But anyway, that's all I'm going to say on this. Let me know what you guys think down below about what some of these people had to say. And I will talk to y'all later. Comments are welcome. So God bless. Take care. I'm out.